Hey, what's up, guys? Today, I'll show you a horror thriller film named A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 5, The Dream Child. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with Alice and her boyfriend Dan having been living a peaceful life after Alice defeated the nightmare killer Freddy in the previous episode. However, their happiness is short-lived as Alice once again falls into a dream state. In her dream, she takes on the persona of a nun named Amanda, who is actually Freddy's mother. She then finds herself in a mental institution where the male patients start assaulting her. It's revealed that Amanda was violated by a group of maniacs, which resulted in her giving birth to a monstrous child, Freddy. However, Alice is unaware of Freddy's origin and wakes up in a panic. Despite her concerns, Alice attends her graduation ceremony at school and shares her nightmare with Dan. He tries to reassure her that as long as she doesn't dream about Freddy, everything will be okay. But as we all know, things are never that simple. That night, Alice dreams about the nursery rhyme and the skipping children from previous films, and finds herself back in the mental institution, witnessing the birth of Freddy. She also witnesses his transformation into a grotesque and hideous creature. As she tries to process what she has just seen, everyone in the operating room disappears, and she finds herself in a church, where Amanda tells her that Freddy has summoned her to be reborn. To stop the demon from killing again, Alice must find Amanda at the top of the tower in the mental institution. Alice was awakened by her colleague at the convenience store, where she was working. It was strange that Alice hadn't fallen into a deep sleep just now, but was pulled into a dream by Freddy while standing. It seemed that Freddy had returned and become even more powerful this time. Even if she remained conscious, Alice could be dragged into the nightmares. Alice quickly called Dan to tell him that Freddy had resurrected. Worried about her safety, Dan hurried to her location. However, an accident occurred on the way. Freddy was mischievously drinking alcohol in the passenger seat, and Dan was thrown out of the car. Dan found another motorcycle and started to speed on the highway. As a result, his body gradually merged with the motorcycle, becoming a low-budget version of the Ghost Rider. Alice seemed to sense something sinister and saw in a flash of an image that Dan's soul was being absorbed by Freddy's body. Alice had a bad feeling and hurried to the door. As expected, Dan had an accident and its car was severely damaged and engulfed in flames. Looking at Dan's bloody body, Alice was saddened. Suddenly, Freddy possessed Dan's body and taunted Alice, asking her if she wanted to have his child. Overwhelmed by the fright, Alice fainted. When she woke up, she was already lying in a hospital bed. Alice told her father that Freddy had killed Dan, but no one believed her bullshit. The police found beer bottle fragments in the car and determined that Dan had caused the accident due to drunk driving. What's worse, Alice learned from the doctor that she was already pregnant and the child's father was Dan. At night, Alice met a little boy named Jacob who said he was lonely and regretted Dan's death. He came just to make sure Alice was okay. Jacob's words surprised Alice, making her wonder how he knew all this. But Jacob didn't answer and left. On the day of her discharge, Alice asked the intern girl at the hospital if she knew Jacob. However, she told her that there were no children among the patients on the same floor, and there was no children's ward in the hospital. Alice must have been too tired and saw it wrong. After returning home, Alice told the story of Freddy's origins to her friend Greta and her boyfriend Mark, a comic fan. However, like everyone else, the three of them didn't believe that the nightmare really existed. However, the nightmare came faster than expected to Alice's friends. The first to suffer was Greta. While everyone was chatting and laughing at the family banquet, Greta was feeling down because her good friend Dan had left. She had no appetite, but didn't expect that just by closing her eyes for a moment, she was dragged into a dream by Freddy. In the dream, her mother became unusually strict and forced Greta to eat quickly, otherwise the guest would be unhappy. Greta spoke out of turn, but before she could finish, Freddy transformed into a chef and forcefully stuffed food into her mouth. Finally, amidst the laughter of the guests, Greta was fed like a goose and turned into a big-mouthed frog. Meanwhile, strange things were also happening with Alice. When she opened the bottles and cans in the fridge, they began to deform, moss started to grow, and even eyeballs appeared in the food. Suddenly, Greta appeared in the fridge, and Alice tried to pull her out, but failed. Greta was still dragged back by Freddy and sent to meet Jesus in front of everyone's eyes. Greta's mysterious death made intern girls start to believe that everything Alice said was true. The two of them found Mark's warehouse and discussed the incident. However, intern girl had to leave early for the hospital night shift, leaving Alice to console Mark and continue to discuss how to deal with Freddy. Just as Alice turned around to pour coffee, Freddy targeted Mark. There was a picture of a cabin on the table, and when Alice saw Mark appear in front of the painted house, she was worried. In despair, Alice drew herself onto the picture as well, and the next second she found herself in the same dream world. She heard Mark's cry for help from underground and rushed to him just in time to pull him up as he was about to fall into a bottomless abyss. They ran out as fast as Tesla bikes, but Mark fainted when he saw the blood in his hand and was saved from danger by this coincidence. At this point, the door behind Alice closed automatically, and the little boy Jacob appeared again. Alice asked him why he was here alone and told him to go home or his mother would worry. In response to her concern, Jacob said he had been having nightmares about his mother rejecting him and asked Alice why she didn't like him. It turned out that Jacob was actually Alice's unborn child. Back to reality, worried about the child's safety, Mark sent Alice to the hospital for a prenatal checkup. With intern girl's help, Alice was able to make an appointment with the doctor smoothly. She finally understood why Freddy was able to bypass her dream and directly kill people. It turns out babies can also dream before they are born, and they spend most of their time in a dreaming state. Therefore, Freddy enters the baby's dream instead. Moreover, he feeds on children by absorbing their souls. Alice must find a way to stop all this. Otherwise, the child she gives birth to will undoubtedly become a monster like Freddy. Mark tried to persuade Alice to abort the child, but she refused and insisted on having the child. After that, Mark went to investigate the identity of Amanda and to clarify what she had said to Alice. He found some old newspapers about Amanda. Unlike Alice's dream, Amanda did not die during Freddy's birth, but rather ended her own life by hanging after Freddy's arrest due to his killings. However, Amanda's body was missing, and her grave was likely just an empty tomb. Mark had read in the Bible that if believers end their lives, their soul will suffer. In other words, to defeat Freddy, they must find Amanda's body and release her suffering soul. In order to find Amanda's hidden corpse as soon as possible, Alice decided to meet her in her dream. Before the mission, she reminded Mark to stay awake and keep an eye on her. Unexpectedly, during this time, intern girl found herself in danger. She was just about to dive when the pedal beneath her suddenly cracked and transformed into steel claws. She leaped into the air and fell directly into a dream. Freddy grabbed her by her hair to intimidate Alice, but Alice took a metal rod and pierced Freddy's throat, which only helped intern girl escape but caused no harm to Freddy. Meanwhile, Mark was lying on the ground reading comics. Suddenly, all the stories turned into Freddy's stories, including Dan and Greta's death. Even the moment when Mark was lying on the ground appeared in the comic. Shocked, Mark was sucked into the comic book, and everything around him turned gray, except for himself. Freddy didn't attack him immediately, but played hide and seek with him. He first destroyed the shelves, and then scared him with the dead Greta. Mark couldn't take it anymore, so he used his imagination in the comic world, and armed himself as a ninja with guns in hand. He fired bullets at Freddy without fear, and as Freddy fell to the ground, Mark thought he had succeeded. But as he turned around, Freddy resurrected in his super form, and Mark became a paper man. Freddy tore him into pieces, and Mark faded away. As her friends kept getting into trouble, Alice's father worried and stayed close to her. With no other options, Alice asked intern girl to search for Amanda's body in the tower, and then she went into the dream to distract Freddy in order to buy intern girl more time. In the dream, Alice pushed Freddy into the midst of the mentally ill patients, and in the blink of an eye, he was torn apart by the group of patients. Then, his torn in pieces body was scattered away. But not long after, Freddy appeared again to flex his monstrous figure. He then changed his tactics and deceived the little boy Jacob into thinking he was his next generation. Under Freddy's sweet words, Jacob had already considered him a friend. But Alice tried to help Jacob get rid of Fred's deception. Upon hearing Alice's call, Jacob didn't hesitate to run into her embrace. In order to prevent the mother and son reunion, Freddy twisted time and space and even turned into Dan to tempt Jacob. Fortunately, Alice saw through Freddy's trick. Just when the mother and son were finally hugging each other, Freddy actually squeezed out of Alice's body, leaving only fear and chaos behind. On the other side, after a search on the high tower, intern girl managed to find Amanda's corpse. The eerie moonlight, coupled with the pigeons flying around, made intern girl tremble in fear. But she still summoned up the courage to approach the corpse. Surprisingly, when intern girl approached, Amanda's body disappeared in an instant, and her soul was finally free. Alice was still fiercely struggling with Freddy. After Amanda appeared here, everyone thought she would land her final blow to destroy Freddy. However, Amanda told Jacob that his mother couldn't defeat Freddy alone, and now only he could help her. Triggered by her words, Jacob turned into a demon-like figure and played with Freddy. Freddy probably regretted feeding him so many souls previously. Just then, Jacob extended his long, juicy tongue, not only pierced Freddy's body, but also released the trapped souls inside. After the final blow, Freddy and Jacob both transformed back into baby forms. What Alice and Amanda had to do next was to put their respective children back into their stomachs. After completing the task, Amanda urged Alice to leave quickly, and she would seal Freddy somewhere. But just when they reached the door, Freddy's claws broke through out of his mother's body. But it remains unknown whether Amanda could control her ghost baby or not. In the end, Alice gave birth to her child safely. For young Jacob, the terrifying experience might just be a dream. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.